his Apache neighbor said. "Rancher, you promised to marry me when I grew up?" He thought she'd forget. The sun rose slowly over the dusty plains, painting the wide horizon in shades of gold and orange. In the quiet morning air, the rancher boy Sam could hear the soft clatter of hooves and the distant calls of birds waking to the new day. His small ranch sat on the edge of a vast desert, where sagebrush and scattered oaks spread as far as the eye could see. Life here was quiet, but it was never lonely, especially during the summers, when he had a companion who made the days feel full of adventure. Her name was Ayanna, an Apache girl who lived just beyond the low hills that bordered the ranch. Her family had lived there for generations, tending the land and keeping the stories of their ancestors alive. Sam had met her one bright morning when he had wandered a little too far from the corral, chasing a runaway calf. She had been sitting by a small stream, her dark hair shining like silk in the sunlight, and she had laughed when he tripped over a rock trying to catch the calf. That day, a friendship began, a friendship that would quietly shape both their lives for years to come. Sam was a boy who loved horses more than anything. His days were filled with riding, helping his father mend fences, and learning to understand the rhythms of the land. Ayanna, though smaller and quieter than him, had a curiosity and courage that matched his own. She would run beside him through the fields, sometimes climbing trees to spot deer in the distance, or wading into the shallow parts of the stream to find frogs and small fish. Together, they explored every corner of the land, imagining it as a world of endless possibility. There was something magical in the way they played. They would sit under the wide star-filled sky at night, sharing stories and dreams. Ayanna told Sam about her ancestors, the Apache warriors and women who had lived on the land long before any ranch was built. She spoke of the traditions and the old songs that still carried meaning in her family. Sam in turn told her about his dreams of one day running the ranch himself, keeping it safe and thriving. Though their worlds were different, they fit together easily, like two pieces of a puzzle. One afternoon, as the summer sun beat down on the red earth, they sat on a hill overlooking the ranch and the distant mountains. Sam was tossing small stones into the dry creek below, watching them bounce and spin. Ayanna sat cross-legged, her eyes on the horizon, her mind clearly elsewhere. Sam looked at her and, without thinking, said, "You know, when you grow up, you'll have to marry me." Ayanna turned to him, her dark eyes wide with surprise. For a moment she didn't speak. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. "Oh, really?" she asked, a playful tone in her voice. "And what if I don't want to?" Sam shrugged, grinning, thinking it was all a joke. "Well, you promised you'd ride horses with me forever, so this seems fair." They both laughed, the sound echoing across the hills. It was a promise said in the innocence of childhood, light and playful, and neither of them thought much of it. Days passed and summer moved slowly over the plains. The two of them continued their adventures, chasing rabbits, climbing trees, and exploring hidden trails. They caught lizards and watched them scurry across rocks. They found patches of wildflowers and sat quietly, just enjoying the beauty of the land. Sam would sometimes show her how to mend a fence or feed the calves, while Ayanna taught him how to recognize the tracks of deer and coyotes in the sand. But even in the laughter and play, there were small, quiet moments that neither of them noticed at first. Sam found himself watching Ayanna when she laughed, noticing the way the sunlight caught her hair.
Ayanna, in her own way, noticed Sam's determination and kindness.
He had a gentle strength, and she admired how he worked tirelessly on the ranch, always thinking about the animals and the land. Though neither of them said it aloud, a bond was growing deeper than friendship, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Summer eventually began to fade, and with it came the bittersweet feeling of parting. Sam would have to help his father with the cattle drive, moving the herd to another part of the plains, while Ayanna returned to her family's home, further into the hills. Before leaving, she handed him a small feather she had found near the stream. "For luck," she said simply. Sam accepted it, slipping it into his pocket, a silent acknowledgement of the connection they shared. As the seasons changed, they continued to see each other when they could, Ayanna would sometimes visit the ranch during weekends, and Sam would sneak away to the hills to spend a few hours exploring with her. They shared stories of school, chores, and dreams, and their childhood promise, spoken once in a playful moment, became a small secret thread tying them together. Sam, ever practical, assumed that as they grew older, life would change, and the promise would fade into memory. But for Ayanna, it was a gentle reminder that some bonds are not easily forgotten. One winter, a heavy snowfall blanketed the plains. Sam remembered walking with Ayanna through the white fields, their breath fogging in the cold air, laughter ringing as they tried to make snow animals. They would sometimes pause, staring at the distant mountains, imagining a future that seemed both near and impossibly far away. It was during these moments, simple and quiet, that Sam began to understand that friendship could be more than just companionship. It could be a comfort, a home, and a promise, however fleeting it might seem. By the time Sam was 14 and Ayanna 12, they had shared countless adventures together. They had built forts, raced through meadows, and fished in the streams. Yet they also began to face the realities of life, responsibilities at home, family expectations, and the slow passage of time that separated childhood from what lay ahead. Still, the memory of that playful promise lingered in the back of their minds, a tiny spark of something neither fully understood yet. For Sam, the ranch was his life, and he loved it deeply. He had dreams of expanding the land, learning everything about cattle and horses, and carrying on the family tradition. For Ayanna, her family and heritage were everything. She was proud of her roots, and she carried the stories of her people like treasures in her heart. Their worlds were different, yet they had created a space where they could meet, laugh, and share dreams. It was simple, beautiful, and completely theirs. As part one closes, Sam and Ayanna sit together on the hill one last summer evening before school starts again. The sky is painted in purples and pinks, the wind carrying the scent of wild sage. They talk about nothing and everything, their voices soft, their laughter easy. Then, almost absent-mindedly, Sam says, "Remember that promise?" Ayanna smiles, a knowing, quiet smile, and nods. "I remember," she says. Sam laughs, shaking his head, thinking she would forget. But deep down, neither of them realizes that this simple, innocent promise will shape their lives in ways they could never imagine. Time moved on, carrying Sam and Ayanna into the next chapter of their lives, though not always together. As summer ended, the long days of school began, stretching before them like a road neither fully wanted to travel. Sam focused on his studies at the small local school, helping his father with the ranch, and dreaming of the day he could take over the land completely. Ayanna, too, had her own world of responsibilities. Her family depended on her to help with daily chores, and she spent hours learning the traditional ways her ancestors had passed down, caring for animals, preparing food, and understanding the land in ways only someone raised on it could. At first, the separation was small. They still saw each other occasionally during weekends or holidays, laughing as they shared stories of school or recent adventures. But slowly, the gaps began to grow. Sam had older cousins who needed help with the larger tasks on the ranch, and weekends were filled with fixing fences, tending cattle, and working under the hot sun. Ayanna's family also grew busier. Her parents relied on her, and she became more aware of the responsibilities that came with growing older. The carefree summers of childhood were becoming memories, beautiful, but distant. Even so, the promise Sam had made that long ago summer still lingered, though he thought of it rarely. To him, it was like a line in the sand that had been washed away by time. He believed childhood promises were meant to be forgotten, swept aside by the demands of life. He didn't think of Ayanna as someone who would remember, or someone who would hold him to that promise. But Ayanna remembered. She carried it quietly, tucked away in her heart, like a small treasure she did not need to show anyone. To her, the promise wasn't a joke. It was a symbol of trust and friendship, a seed planted in the soil of childhood that she hoped might one day grow. Every time she thought of Sam, she remembered the way he laughed, the way he treated the land, and the way he seemed to understand her in a way no one else did. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of their friendship, even as the seasons changed and life pulled them into different directions. High school brought new challenges and new faces. Sam met other boys at school who shared his love for the land and the work of ranching. They talked about future plans, about the cattle trade, and about the mechanics of running a large ranch. Sam's focus was clear. He wanted to become skilled, to make his father proud, and to honor the land that had been in his family for generations. Romance, love, or promises made as a child were far from his mind. Ayana also changed. She began spending more time with her friends in the community, learning new skills and dreaming quietly about her own future. She wanted to continue her family's traditions while also exploring opportunities beyond the hills and streams she had always known. But the promise remained, quiet and unwavering, a thread connecting her to Sam even when he did not realize it. Their visits became less frequent. Sometimes Sam would see Ayana from a distance during local events, or she would stop by the ranch when her family needed supplies. Each meeting was filled with smiles and small talk, but it was clear that both were being pulled in different directions. Life was moving fast, and neither fully understood how much they were growing apart, or how much they were still connected by memories of summers past. One spring when Sam was 16, he left home for a short season working on a neighboring ranch. He traveled with his father and a few family friends, learning how to round up cattle over long distances, mend broken fences far from home, and care for the animals during the changing weather. The work was exhausting, and yet Sam loved it. He felt a deep pride in knowing he was learning the skills that would one day make him a capable rancher. But in all this hard work, he rarely thought of Ayana. The promise of long ago seemed like a story from another life, distant and almost unreal.
Ayana, meanwhile, continued her life in the hills, watching over her younger siblings, helping her parents, and keeping the family land in order.
She also continued to grow in quiet confidence, developing a voice and presence that made people listen. Even though she rarely saw Sam during these years, she remembered their adventures, their laughter, and the words he had said. The promise was not just a memory. It was a reminder that some bonds are deeper than distance or time. Yet life had a way of surprising both of them. One summer evening, when the air was warm and the sky streaked with pinks and purples, Sam returned to his home ranch after a long season away. The familiar sights of the hills, the smell of the dry earth, and the soft lowing of cattle brought him a sense of peace he had not felt for months. He wandered through the fields, remembering the adventures of childhood, the races through meadows, the hidden paths, the quiet moments under the stars. And in those memories, Ayana was always there, smiling, laughing, a part of every corner of the land he loved. Didn't expect to see her. Life had moved on, and he assumed she was busy with her own family, her own responsibilities. Yet as he turned a corner near the stream where they had once played for hours, there she was, older now, taller, stronger, but still carrying the same quiet warmth he had always known. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years between them seemed to melt away. Ayana smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Sam," she said, her voice calm but full of meaning. "Do you remember the promise?" Sam blinked, taken aback. His heart beat faster, not because of fear, but because he realized he had truly forgotten. "Promise?" he asked slowly, trying to recall what she meant. "The one you made years ago," she said softly, her eyes steady. "You promised to marry me when I grew up. Do you remember now?" Sam laughed nervously, shaking his head.
I thought that was a joke. I didn't think anyone would remember.
He looked at her, noticing how much she had grown, how confident and strong she had become. I didn't think it mattered." "But it did matter!" Ayana's smile did not falter. "It mattered to me," she said simply. "I never forgot." "I didn't think you would either." Sam felt a strange mix of emotions. There was surprise, yes, and a little embarrassment, but there was also something else. A realization that the bond they had formed as children was not something that could easily be erased by time or distance. The promise, once a playful joke, now carried weight and meaning he had never expected. Over the next few days, they spent more time together. They walked along the familiar hills, shared meals, and talked about the years they had missed. Sam began to notice things he hadn't before. The way Ayana's laughter still carried a lightness that could lift the heaviest mood. The way she spoke with quiet authority about the land and her family. The way her eyes held both kindness and determination. He realized that growing up hadn't changed her at all. It had only made her stronger and more beautiful in ways he had not anticipated. For Ayana, the meetings were both comforting and revealing. She saw the same boy she had grown up with, but now he was a young man, responsible and hard-working. She saw his love for the land and the ranch, his dedication to his family, and the quiet integrity that had always been a part of him. And yet, she also saw the way he had tried to forget, the way he had distanced himself from the promise. Despite this, she did not push. She knew that time and patience were necessary. The promise, after all, was not just about words. It was about understanding, respect, and shared history. She allowed the connection to grow slowly, hoping that one day Sam would see what she had always known, that their bond was special, and that some promises are meant to last longer than childhood. As part 2 closes, the two of them sit together near the stream at sunset, watching the water flow over the smooth stones. Sam is quiet, thoughtful, and Ayana sits beside him, calm and steady. The air is filled with the soft sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of wind over the hills. And in that quiet moment, Sam begins to understand that childhood memories, promises, and bonds have a way of finding their way back, no matter how far life tries to carry them apart. The story of separation, growth, and rediscovery has begun, setting the stage for the challenges and choices they will face in the years ahead. Summer had returned to the plains, carrying with it the golden heat of long days and the scent of wild sage drifting through the air. Sam was working hard on the ranch, checking fences, feeding calves, and preparing for the busy season ahead. The rhythm of the land was familiar to him, comforting in its predictability. Yet, in his heart, there was a quiet stir he could not explain, an echo of the encounter with Ayana that had happened months earlier. He had not expected to see her again so soon. Life had moved on for both of them, or so he thought. Yet the memory of her presence lingered. The promise she had reminded him of, once a fleeting thought, now returned to him with unexpected weight. He realized he had not considered what it meant, what it could mean, or how deeply she had held on to it all these years. The idea unsettled him, but also intrigued him. It was on a warm afternoon, while Sam was fixing a broken fence near the edge of the ranch, that he saw her again. She appeared over the hill, walking gracefully along the dirt path, a basket in her hands. Ayana had grown taller, her movements confident and measured, yet there was a softness in her eyes that had always drawn him. Seeing her in the sunlight framed against the hills, Sam felt a rush of memories, of childhood adventures, of laughter, of the countless moments spent together by the stream and under the stars.
Sam, she called, her voice calm and warm.
Back and hope I'm not disturbing you. He shook his head, suddenly aware that his heart was beating faster than it had in years. Not at all, he replied, trying to sound casual, though he knew he was failing. It's good to see you. They walked together along the path, talking about the simple things, how the cattle were doing, how the land had changed over the seasons, and stories of friends and family. The conversation was easy, flowing naturally, like water over smooth stones, yet under it ran a subtle current of something deeper. Sam could feel the weight of the past pressing gently against the present, and he found himself thinking more carefully about his words and actions. As they reached a shaded area beneath a large oak tree, they sat down. Ayana placed her basket beside her and looked at him, her expression steady but expectant. Do you ever think about it, she asked, her voice soft but firm. The promise you made years ago? He had thought about it only briefly, dismissing it as a childish joke. But now, hearing her say it aloud, seeing her eyes fixed on him, he realized that it was more than a memory. It was a feeling she had carried all these years. He swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I thought you would forget, he admitted honestly.
I didn't think it mattered.
I didn't forget, she said simply.
It mattered to me. It mattered because it was a promise, Sam. And some promises are not so easy to forget. For a long moment they sat in silence, listening to the wind whispering through the leaves, the distant lowing of the cattle and the soft hum of life around them. Sam's mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. He remembered the boy who had spoken without thought, the careless words of a summer afternoon. And yet he also recognized the man he had become, responsible, aware, and beginning to understand that words, even when spoken in play, could carry weight far beyond what he had imagined. "I didn't realize," he began slowly. "I didn't realize you remembered it all this time." "I did," Ayana said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I never stopped remembering. I waited because I wanted to see if life would bring you back to me, even if only by chance." Her words struck Sam in a way he had not expected. He felt a mixture of guilt and admiration, surprise, and something he could not yet name. He realized that the bond they had shared as children was not broken, and that it had grown stronger in ways he had not understood. The playful promise of youth had transformed into something meaningful, carried by patience and trust. Over the next several days, Sam and Ayana spent more time together, reconnecting in ways both small and profound. They walked through the hills, sharing stories of the years apart, discovering how much had changed, and yet how much had remained the same. Sam noticed the quiet strength in Ayana, the way she carried herself, the wisdom she had gained from her experiences. He realized that she had grown into a woman of remarkable depth, someone whose presence could not be ignored.
Ayana, in turn, observed Sam with a mixture of fondness and caution.
She saw the young man he had become, capable, hard-working, respectful. But she also noticed his hesitation, the uncertainty in his eyes when the past was mentioned. She understood that life had shaped him in ways she could not have predicted, and yet she believed in the connection they had once shared. She believed that some promises, once made with sincerity, had a way of returning when the time was right. One afternoon, as they rested near the stream where they had played as children, Ayana spoke quietly. "Do you remember how we used to race along this path?" she asked, gesturing to the dusty trail. Sam laughed softly, nodding. "I remember. You always won, even when I tried my hardest." "And you promised not to cry when I beat you," she teased, her eyes sparkling. "Do you remember that too?" He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I think I do." The simplicity of their conversation, the ease of being together, reminded Sam of the beauty of their shared past. But beneath the laughter there was an unspoken truth, something that neither could ignore. The promise of years ago had returned, demanding attention, urging them to confront what it really meant. In the evenings, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, they would sit together in quiet reflection. Sam began to notice how much he had missed her, how much he had taken for granted the bond they had shared. He realized that their connection was not merely a product of childhood fun, but a foundation built on understanding, respect, and genuine affection. Ayana, for her part, felt a sense of relief and hope. She had waited patiently, allowing life to unfold, and now she saw that her patience had not been in vain. The boy who had promised long ago was no longer a child, and the man he had become was someone she could trust, admire, and perhaps love. Their conversations grew deeper. They spoke of their dreams, their fears, and the responsibilities that weighed on them. Sam shared his plans for the ranch, his desire to honor his family's legacy, and the challenges he faced in taking on more responsibility. Ayana spoke of her own hopes, of maintaining her family's traditions, and of finding a balance between duty and personal freedom. In these talks they found not just companionship but understanding, a recognition that their lives, though separate, were connected in ways that mattered deeply. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, Sam turned to Ayana with a thoughtful expression. "I never realized how much that promise meant to you," he said softly. I didn't mean to forget, and I didn't think it mattered back then. But now, I see that it does." Ayana smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It mattered because it was real, Sam. Even if you didn't remember, it was real to me, and sometimes that's enough." The words lingered between them, carrying a weight neither had anticipated. Sam felt a shift inside him, a growing awareness that the past and present were intertwined, that some connections could not be broken by time or distance. The promise, once playful and light, had become a bridge between who they were and who they were becoming. Over the next few weeks, they spent almost every day together, slowly rediscovering the bond they had shared as children. They laughed, they talked, and they explored the land they both loved. Sam found himself thinking more about Ayanna than he had in years, realizing that the connection he had dismissed as a boy was now something he could not ignore. Ayanna, in turn, observed the changes in him, noticing the way he treated the land, the animals, and the people around him. She saw his heart, his dedication, and his integrity, and she felt a quiet certainty growing within her, that their bond was not just a memory, but a living, breathing part of their lives that deserved attention and care.
As part 3 closes, the two of them sit together under the wide-open sky, the stars beginning to appear one by one.
The air is warm, filled with a scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of cattle. They are silent, yet the silence is not empty.
It is full of understanding, reflection, and the quiet promise that some connections, once formed, can endure even the longest stretches of time.
In that moment, Sam begins to see that life is not only about duty and responsibility. It is also about the bonds we honor, the promises we keep, and the people who shape us in ways we cannot forget. And Ayanna knows that patience, trust, and hope can bring even the most forgotten promises back to life when the time is right. The days that followed their reunion were filled with a strange mix of comfort and uncertainty. Sam and Ayanna spent time together almost every day, wandering the hills, exploring hidden trails, or sitting quietly by the stream that had once been the center of their childhood adventures. The land seemed the same, yet everything felt different. Time had passed, and they had both grown, but the bond that connected them had remained, strong and undeniable. Sam found himself thinking about Ayanna more often than he had expected. He noticed the subtle changes in her, how her laughter had matured into a gentle warmth, how her eyes reflected not only curiosity but also wisdom, how her presence had a calmness that made the air around her feel lighter. He began to see the world differently when she was near. The tasks he once considered routine on the ranch now seemed richer, more meaningful, because he imagined sharing them with her. Yet with these feelings came doubt. Sam struggled with his own expectations and responsibilities. Running the ranch was no small task, and he often worried about whether he could balance it with the emotions stirring inside him. He wondered if it was right to revisit a promise from their childhood, whether it was fair to Ayanna or himself to let past words influence the present. Most of all, he feared making mistakes that could hurt the girl who had trusted him all these years. Ayanna noticed his hesitation, though she never pressed him. She understood that life had shaped him into a thoughtful, cautious young man. She respected his need to consider his responsibilities, his future, and the promises he had made, not just to her, but to himself and his family. Yet she also hoped that he would see what she had always known, that their bond was rare, something to be cherished, and that sometimes the heart knows what the mind hesitates to admit. They spent one afternoon walking along the ridge above the ranch, the sun casting long shadows over the hills. Sam carried a small bundle of fencing supplies, while Ayanna held a woven basket filled with herbs and small flowers she had gathered from the hillsides. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the sounds of nature, the whispering wind, the distant call of a hawk, and the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. "Sam," Ayanna said quietly, breaking the silence, "do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't drifted apart all those years?" He paused, glancing at her as they walked. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I also know that life doesn't always follow the path we expect. Things change. People change. And sometimes what we imagine in the past doesn't fit the present."
Ayanna nodded thoughtfully. "I know."
"But some things don't change," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Some connections, some memories, and some promises, they stay with us even when life moves us apart." Her words lingered in Sam's mind, and he realized that she was right. The promise he had made as a boy was no longer just a childish joke. It was a symbol of trust, affection, and shared history. He began to understand that it carried more meaning than he had imagined, and that honoring it would not be a burden, but a choice he could make freely, with respect for both of them. Over the next few days, Sam and Ayanna worked together on the ranch, repairing fences, feeding the animals, and helping with the daily tasks that kept the land alive. The work was hard, but it brought them closer. They laughed when things went wrong, shared quiet moments when the sun dipped low in the sky, and gradually began to speak more openly about their feelings and hopes. Sam found himself opening up in ways he had not done before, telling Ayanna about the pressures he felt, the dreams he carried, and the fears that kept him awake at night. Ayanna listened patiently, offering understanding and gentle encouragement. She shared her own experiences, the challenges she faced, and the lessons she had learned from her family and community. In these conversations, they discovered a deeper understanding of each other, not just the memories of childhood, but the people they had become. Their bond was no longer defined solely by the promise of the past, but by the choices and understanding of the present. One evening, as the sky turned a deep orange and the stars began to appear, Sam found himself sitting beside Ayanna on the porch of his family's small cabin. The air was warm, carrying the scent of sage and earth. He turned to her, feeling the weight of the moment.
Ayanna, he began, hesitating slightly. I've been thinking about the promise, about what it meant, and what it might mean now.
She looked at him with quiet anticipation, her eyes steady. "And?" she asked softly. "I see now that it wasn't just words," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It was a connection, something that mattered to both of us, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I want to honor that not because I feel I have to, but because I want to, because you matter to me." Ayanna's eyes softened, and a small smile appeared on her lips.
"I've always believed that," she said. "I never wanted you to feel pressured."
"I just wanted you to see what I have always known, that our bond is real." Sam reached out, taking her hand in his, feeling the warmth and strength of her touch. It was a simple gesture, but it carried years of unspoken understanding, trust, and affection. In that moment, he realized that the path forward was not about repeating the past, but about building a future together, carefully, respectfully, and with full awareness of the promises that had shaped them. The following weeks were filled with small, meaningful moments. They would rise early to tend to the cattle, sharing laughter and conversation as they worked. They explored the hills together, finding hidden groves, observing wildlife, and talking about the dreams they held for the future. Sam noticed how much Ayanna had grown, how capable and wise she had become, and how much he admired her strength and determination. Ayanna, in turn, observed the changes in Sam. She saw the care he took with the land, the way he treated the animals, and the thoughtfulness he brought to every decision. She realized that the boy she had grown up with had become a man of integrity, someone worthy of trust, love, and partnership. Their bond, once playful and simple, had matured into something deeper, rooted in shared experiences and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they sat beneath a large oak tree near the stream, Ayanna spoke again. "Sam, do you ever worry about the future?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with curiosity. He nodded. "All the time," he admitted. "Running the ranch, keeping the animals safe, thinking about family, it's a lot of responsibility. And now, thinking about us, about what this promise means, it makes me realize that the choices I make matter even more." Ayanna smiled gently. "I understand, but the future doesn't have to be frightening. It can be something we build together, slowly, carefully, with respect for each other and for the lives we lead." He realized that the hesitation he felt was not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of the responsibility he carried. And in that moment, he also understood that choosing to honor their bond, to embrace the connection they had nurtured for so long, was not a burden. It was a privilege. As part 4 comes to a close, Sam and Ayanna walk along the stream together, the sun setting behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the water. They are quiet, but the silence is filled with understanding, trust, and the quiet excitement of possibilities. Sam knows that the road ahead will require thought, patience, and care, but he also knows that he does not have to face it alone. Ayana walks beside him calm and confident, knowing that the bond they share has survived time, distance, and the uncertainties of growing up. Together, they begin to imagine a future where their promise is no longer a memory, but a living, breathing part of their lives. A promise honored not out of obligation, but out of mutual respect, understanding, and love. The story of reconnection, reflection, and the careful choice to embrace their bond sets the stage for the final chapter, where decisions will be made, hearts will be revealed, and the promise of years past will finally find its place in the present. The summer sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the ranch. Sam and Ayana had spent the morning tending to the cattle, mending fences, and walking through the hills that had always been their playground and sanctuary. The work was steady, the land alive with the sounds of rustling grass, the lowing of cattle, and the occasional call of a hawk circling above. Yet beneath the calm routine a deeper current flowed, one that neither of them could ignore any longer. For Sam, the past weeks had been a journey of discovery. He had come to understand the weight of the promise he had made years ago, a promise he had once thought insignificant. Time and experience had shown him that some words carry power, not because they are forced upon someone, but because they are remembered, cherished, and honored. He had seen Ayana's quiet patience, her steadfastness, and the strength she carried in every action. And in his heart, he realized that the bond they shared had grown into something far beyond childhood friendship. It had become a connection that mattered deeply. Ayana, too, had felt the passage of time in her own way. She had watched Sam struggle with his responsibilities, his doubts, and the careful deliberation that came with growing into adulthood. Yet she had also seen the kindness in his actions, the respect in his words, and the sincerity in his heart. She understood that a promise is not only about the words spoken, but about the choices we make afterward. And she had waited, quietly, hoping that Sam would come to see what she had always known, that their bond was rare, valuable, and worth nurturing. That evening, after the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sam and Ayana sat on the ridge overlooking the valley. The air was warm, carrying the scent of sage and the soft hum of insects beginning their nightly chorus. Sam turned to Ayana, his expression thoughtful, his voice gentle. "Ayana," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about the promise, and about the future. I realize now that it's not just about a promise made long ago. It's about respect, trust, and understanding. And I want to honor that, with you, if you will let me." Ayana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light, steady and patient. "Sam," she replied softly, "I never wanted you to feel pressured. I just wanted you to see that our connection is real. That it matters. And now I see that you understand that too." A quiet moment passed between them, filled only with the gentle sounds of the land. Then Sam reached out, taking her hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it carried years of unspoken words, shared memories, and the weight of trust and affection that had grown between them. "I want us to build a future together," he said, his voice steady now, "not just because of a promise, but because I care for you, and I respect you. I want to be with you not because I should, but because I choose to." Ayana's smile widened, though it remained calm and gentle. "And I choose to be with you, Sam, not because of the past, but because of what we are now and what we can become together." With those words, a quiet understanding settled over them. The bond they had nurtured for so long was no longer a memory or a playful promise. It was a living, breathing part of their lives. They had arrived at this point not by chance, but through patience, reflection, and the willingness to understand each other deeply. The following weeks were filled with the joyful work of building something new together. They planned small projects on the ranch, repaired old fences, and tended to the animals with a renewed sense of purpose. Every task they undertook became an opportunity to grow closer, to share in responsibility, and to support each other. Even the smallest gestures, a smile, a helping hand, a shared laugh, carried a sense of intimacy that had been absent for so many years. At night, they would sit beneath the stars, recalling stories from their childhood, laughing at their misadventures, and marveling at the way life had carried them back to each other. They spoke of dreams, Sam's desire to expand and improve the ranch, Ayana's hope to preserve her family's traditions and heritage, and their shared vision of a life built on trust, love, and mutual respect. The promise of their youth had grown into a partnership of equals. One evening, as the golden light of sunset bathed the hills, Sam and Ayana walked hand in hand to the stream where they had first shared countless hours as children. The water sparkled in the fading light, reflecting the colors of the sky. Sam knelt beside the stream, picking up a smooth stone and tossing it gently into the water. Ayana watched him, her heart filled with a quiet happiness she had long imagined. "You know," Sam said thoughtfully, "I never realized how much waiting, reflecting, and understanding would matter. I thought I had to rush to grow up, to take care of everything. But now I see that the right moments like this, are worth waiting for." Ayana nodded. "Life teaches us patience," she said softly. "It teaches us to value the connections that matter, to understand what is truly important, and to recognize when someone is worth keeping close." They sat together in silence for a while, listening to the gentle flow of the stream, feeling the warmth of the evening air, and appreciating the quiet beauty of the land that had always been a part of their lives. It was a moment of peace, reflection, and profound understanding, a moment that marked the beginning of the life they would build together. In the weeks that followed, Sam and Ayana continued to strengthen their bond. They shared responsibilities, celebrated small victories on the ranch, and supported each other through challenges. They grew not only as individuals but as partners, learning how to balance love, respect, and duty. Each day brought new opportunities to understand one another, to communicate openly, and to cherish the connection that had survived the test of time. As the season began to shift toward autumn, Sam and Ayana knew that their future would not be without challenges. Running a ranch, preserving traditions, and building a life together required effort, compromise, and dedication. Yet they faced these challenges with confidence, knowing that their bond, built on years of trust, patience, and understanding, was strong enough to endure whatever came their way. One crisp morning, as the first hints of autumn colored the hills in warm reds and golds, Sam and Ayana stood together on the ridge overlooking the valley. The land stretched before them, alive and vibrant, filled with possibilities. Sam turned to Ayana, a gentle smile on his face, and took her hand. "I promise," he said softly, "to face whatever comes, together, to honor the bond we share, the promises we keep, and the life we will build."
Ayana squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with quiet happiness.
"And I promise," she replied, "to walk beside you, to support you, and to cherish every moment we have together." In that moment, the past and present merged. The promise of childhood had become a choice made in maturity, a choice not out of obligation but out of love, respect, and understanding. Their hearts were aligned, their bond stronger than ever, and the path ahead, though unknown, was bright with possibility. As the sun rose higher, casting its warm light across the hills and valleys, Sam and Ayana walked together back toward the ranch. Each step was filled with confidence, hope, and the quiet joy of knowing that they had found in each other a connection worth waiting for. The story of childhood friendship, separation, reflection, and reconnection had reached its natural conclusion. They were no longer just a boy and a girl who had made a playful promise. They were partners, equals, and companions, ready to face life's challenges together, while honoring the bond that had begun all those years ago. The land, the hills, and the stream bore witness to their journey, standing as silent reminders that true bonds, once formed and nurtured, can endure the tests of time, distance, and growth. And for Sam and Ayana, the future was no longer uncertain. It was a shared path, built on love, respect, and the quiet promise that had finally found its place in the present.